Slowly, the beluga whale dove under the water. Silt and loose gravel clung to his blubber, weighing him down. Bubbles rose from his blowhole as he descended down into the deep. He was looking for food, a scarcity nowadays. Almost all of the small fish and crustaceans were nowhere to be found. Slowly, his fins started to weaken. He didn't have any choice but to drift down. Far above, the last beam of sunlight struck a rocky outcropping as the beluga whale submerged into darkness. It had been a long summer. The muddy brown leaves had just fallen from the trees and were resting on the surface of the water. All the beluga whales had met up in the Arctic to search for food surrounding the bottom of the icebergs. Never had there been such a wide expanse of water for them to scavenge in. Usually, the water stopped at the glaciers. This year, it expanded hundreds of meters farther back into the cliffs. The food had been plentiful, the water extra warm, just how he liked it. His pod moved inland towards the mountains. The expanse of rock and ice towered high above the water. Every once in a while, he would hear the drip-drop of the tiny streams hitting the surface. Crash! A piece of ice slammed against the outcrop of rock just next to him. He quickly turned his head and dove down deep into the safety of the water. He popped up out of the water to look for his pod, but they were nowhere to be found. That's when he saw it. A chunk of ice, as big as a school of salmon, screaming down the cliffs towards him. Like the focus of an earthquake, the iceberg cut deep into the water, creating waves almost as big as itself. There was nothing that Beluga could do but get carried by the tremendous force of the wave. What some would call a scientific mystery, he would call magic. He thought to himself. The TV in the sitting room flickered with the local news. The newscasters' voices rebounded around the house like light bouncing off of reflective surfaces. He couldn't fully make out the words, but he knew that they were talking about the weather. His father sat slumped over like a sloth, intent but disconnected from the outside world. His father took a chug of whatever kind of beer he had in his hand. Bicycle. No Budweiser. No Brahma, the boy thought to himself. All he could see was the bee. Sometimes he would do this for hours, guessing the kind of beer his dad was drinking. Always from the same spot, just around the table, a direct 45-degree angle from the couch, a perfect view of the bottle. He wouldn't dare get closer. He had tried before, but it didn't go well. It never did. He would sometimes joke to himself about how he was the real man in the family, the only man, just a boy stuck as a man for the rest of his life. Breaking news. A new species of animal was just seen flying over the coast of the Hudson's Bay Lowlands, the TV explained. Possibly the biggest flying animal ever recorded. The TV station switched to a video of what looked like a white blob with wings flying over the water. That's when he heard it. A black car pulled up outside of his house. It was something from a movie. A black four-wheeler with tinted windows. He could just imagine James Bond stepping out of the shadows and telling him to hide. Though the men didn't stop at his door, they almost seemed to stay clear of his house, like they were doing something that they shouldn't have been. He got up out of his seat silently. With a mix of martial arts and parkour, he squirmed his way out of the room and out the door. It's not like his dad would have cared. he probably wouldn't have even noticed his disappearance. It was almost like a video game, where you try to not wake up the sleeping beast. In this case, the monster was his father, but he had watched too many spy movies to quit. Once the boy got outside, he looked around. The sky was crystal blue, the same color as the crystal clear water. Carefully, he sneaked up behind the man and woman, hiding under a table nearby. It turned out that the man and woman were actually scientists, or something like that, because they were all using these fancy terms like ecosystem and crossbreed. That's when it clicked for him. We were standing in the exact spot mentioned on TV, which, from any coincidence, was right outside his house.
There must be some kind of disturbance in its migration south, something that removed the beluga from its pod.
A disturbance. Or some kind of reaction that might have created this.
I got it. Adaptation takes hundreds to thousands of years. We may not be talking about a new species here. What stands out over the last 100 years as a geographic event? The temperature hike of 2055! The carbon levels that year were crazy. There was nothing blocking the sun. You didn't even need a Bunsen burner. Chunks of ice falling off the glaciers bigger than the Hudson's Bay.
They had frozen. He turned to look up, and that's when he saw it. He looked up in astonishment at the pearl-white beluga, soaring out of his view. Wow, he thought, there would never be a summer quite like this one.